Today's lesson is going to be about revising claims. We have several goals for this lesson. First, we want to make sure that we understand the difference between editing and revising. Second, we're going to use a write aloud to show how we revise a claim. We're going to go from good to great, practice revising your claim, and then we're going to look at the 3 core skills for making successful claims. Finally, we'll write and revise your claim for Monday's short response. It's really important to understand that everyone revises their writing. There's no such thing as someone who writes something perfectly the first time. Speechwriters revise their writing. Book authors revise their writing. Rappers revise their writing. TV writers revise their writing. The great thing about revision is it allows us to go back and take a self-conscious look at what we wrote the first time with an eye towards making it better. The idea that the first time you try something is the best time you'll ever try something is just silly. Think about a game that you like to play. Think about a sport that you're good at. Think about a dance that you know, or some other skill. The first time you did it wasn't your best attempt. You probably tried really hard. You probably stumbled over some things, and you're probably really proud of the effort you made that first time around. But that doesn't mean that's the best you can do. The same is true with writing. It's very important that when we're writing something that's going to be read by other people, that we take some time to go back and make sure there aren't changes that need to be made to make it more clear or to make it more effective. That's what revising is. Revising and editing are often confused, but they are not the same thing. The idea behind revising is that you are adding sentences, words, details, and examples. You're removing things that are unneeded, such as words, sentences, transitions, or ideas. You're moving sentences, words, or sections around so they make more sense. And you're substituting words or sentences for others. When you're editing, you're thinking about capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling. Revising is thinking about ideas. It's about seeing your discussion from a new point of view. Editing is about catching mistakes. First, you need to think about how you're explaining yourself. You need to think about how your ideas are being presented before you can think about the little details about capitalization and grammar. We're going to focus on revision today. You're going to focus on the claim you wrote on Monday about the video that you watched. You wrote your claim originally in the discussion board. Hopefully, by now, someone else has responded to your claim. You should have gotten some feedback on it. You're going to go through and try and revise that claim as best as you can. In order to do this, you're going to take a look at your original claim. You're going to look at 1 or 2 words to rewrite and revise. You're going to make those changes and then look at it again. You're going to do this several times until you're satisfied. You'll probably do it 4 or 5 times before you're at something that is a strong claim, which we'll discuss in a second, but you need to make at least 2 revisions. On this slide, you'll see an example of a progression of claims that you might make. For example, you might start off with birds are bad pets. Well, we can be more specific. We can change a word. Parrots are bad pets. Well, if I look at that again, bad isn't a very strong word. Let's try dreadful. Parrots make dreadful pets. Well, parrots are okay, but really it's baby parrots that are a problem. So I make another revision. That's not very specific. I bet I can go a little bit deeper. Baby parrots from the northern coast of Brazil make dreadful pets. Each time I go through, I'm just looking for one word, one idea that I can revise or make better. Let's look at some of the things that can be made better in some example claims. There are 3 things that need to be going on in your claim for it to be highly successful. It needs to be highly reasonable, richly expressed, and well written. If something is highly reasonable, it's something that is logical, rational, and sound. Basically, it's common sense. Highly reasonable claims are things that when you hear them, you're like, oh, yeah, Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean something that feels good. It's something that sounds like it is, or something a reasonable and logical person would say. Look at some examples here. An example of a highly reasonable claim is the school should offer students time each day to relax, play, energize, and get individual help on work from their teachers. That sounds reasonable. That's something that a reasonable person, a logical person, a person who's thought things through might say. An unreasonable version of that claim might be the school should cancel all learning so that students can spend all day relaxing, playing, and not doing any schoolwork. As much as we might like that to be the case, that's not something a reasonable person would say. We know that schools exist not to let people play, schools exist to help people learn. It is reasonable for someone to say that students should get some time to relax. It's not reasonable to say students should only have time to relax. Let's take a look at another example. Students should plan to study a few minutes each day to make sure they understand the material covered in class. Not necessarily something that you like to hear, but it's reasonable. It's reasonable to ask students to think about looking back at their work for a couple minutes. It's unreasonable, however, to say that students should wait until it is necessary to study, like before a test, in order to get the best grades. As much as we would like it to be true that people get the best grades when they study at the very last minute, we know that's not reasonable. No one would reasonably expect to look back at their notes right before a test and get the best possible grade. Let's look at the last example for highly reasonable claims. If you like a spicy, crunchy snack but dislike triangle-shaped corn chips, then Takis are the food for you. That's very reasonable. Someone might disagree. You might like other spicy, crunchy snacks like Flaming Hot Cheetos, for example. But it's reasonable. It's something that someone who is rational might say. An unreasonable claim is Takis are the greatest snack food ever. I mean, you might agree with that, but it's not really a reasonable claim, right? It's not something that a rational person would necessarily hear it and be like, oh, yeah, duh, of course. And that's really what we're talking about with highly reasonable. It's the duh test, right? If you hear something and you're like, well, yeah, that sounds reasonable, of course. Who would disagree with that? Then it's highly reasonable. If you hear something and you're like, I don't know, not highly reasonable. The second skill for a very successful claim is that it should be richly expressed. This is something that has some pop, some pizzazz. It has some type of hook. It has some energy and grabs the reader's attention. Take a look at these examples. A richly expressed claim might read, it is critical for teachers to send a clear message that bullying will not be tolerated at school. A boring version of that claim would be, bullying is bad and teachers should tell that to kids. They say the same thing. It's critical for teachers to send a clear message that bullying is not okay. Is the same basic idea that teachers should tell kids that bullying is bad. Look at how, in the first example, words were chosen specifically to make it pop, to grab the reader's attention, to make it sound a little bit impressive. Look at the second example. Serving vanilla chocolate swirl ice cream cake at a kid's birthday party ensures that all guests will be satisfied. Look at that other example. Ice cream cake is good to serve at birthday parties. They're both saying the same basic idea, but the first one is more detailed. It talks about vanilla chocolate swirl ice cream cake as opposed to just basic boring ice cream cake. And it uses words like ensures and satisfied instead of just is good. These choices in vocabulary help to make the claim a little bit poppier. It sounds more impressive. You're more likely to believe it. Last example. Playing a game of horse is a great way to practice your basketball shooting skills while competing against one or two friends. That type of statement is a lot more convincing than horse is a fun game if you like basketball. They're both true, and they're both saying basically the same thing. However, one of them uses more detailed words and more convincing vocabulary to grab the reader's attention. That's how to make a claim richly expressed. Finally, let's take a look at well-written claims. A well-written claim pays close attention to the details of careful writing, things like spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Look at these examples. Doctors say that eating too much candy is detrimental for a child's health, versus doctors agree that eating too much candy is detrimental to a child's health. They're the exact same words, but look at the mistakes in the left-hand column. Similarly, in the second example, you have a writer using abbreviations like the letter B instead of the word be, and the number 2 instead of the word to. Finally, the last example is the scariest movie ever is Annabelle because that doll is crazy. The word choice here is not particularly academic, and there's lots of text lingo. Please make sure when you're writing claims that you're using standard written English. Using those 3 tools, highly reasonable claims, richly expressed claims, and well-written claims, makes you sound like you know what you're talking about and convinces people to pay attention to your argument. So, before you go to hand something in for this last idea about being well-written, make sure you're checking for capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. Before you go, we have a couple last-minute tips to be successful when you're writing claims. First, make sure you're answering the question that's being asked. For example, if I ask you, what is the best type of fish to buy a 5-year-old who's never owned a pet before, saying, you should get them a 5-year-old puppy, preferably a Labrador Retriever. It's the best choice for a pet, is not going to get you full points. In fact, you'll get a 0 because you're not answering the question I asked. If I ask you what type of fish to get and you tell me what type of puppy to get, you're not going to get points for that. A better answer is, when it comes to the best type of fish to buy a 5-year-old as a first pet, it's really hard to beat a goldfish. Make sure you're taking a clear position. For example, if I ask you, what's the best type of after-school snack? And you say, serving pretzels is one good choice for an afternoon snack, but a nice piece of fruit or even a cold popsicle is a good snack too. That doesn't work because you're not taking a clear position. Your claim is all over the place. I ask you the best type of snack, and you list 3 different snacks that are all okay. Try, the best after-school snack to serve is a healthy piece of fruit. I don't particularly believe that, but it is at least a clear position. It is very obvious what my claim is. Finally, make sure you're repeating the key words of the question when you answer it. For example, if I ask, what is the most delicious but least healthy snack you sometimes eat at lunch? Saying, I eat sour cream and onion potato chips at lunch is not useful. First, that's just a statement of fact. It's not a claim. Second, someone who's reading it who hasn't seen the prompt won't know why you're saying it, and you'll sound crazy. Instead, saying, the most delicious but least healthy snack I sometimes eat at lunch is sour cream and onion potato chips is a much more effective claim because it uses the words from the question. It is clearly a claim because it's saying most delicious but least healthy snack. That's something that can be debated. It's not just a statement, I eat these things. So, what I need you to do is to click the next page to go into Canvas and revise your claim from Monday. Remember that if you have any questions, you can contact me during my scheduled office hours. Thanks.